Hello, everybody. It is Tobin here. Thank you for tuning on into the channel. Much appreciated. If you wouldn't mind, subscribe, and you'll get notifications every time we post a video. I'll be boots on the ground. It's kind of going to be a quiet boots time coming up on the channel, just because not a ton going on. I might get out some fights locally, bring some fighter interviews and things like that. But as far as the Dolphins, Dolphins is off right now up until August. And the Heat, they're going to be pretty much out until, I don't know, September. I mean, there'll be a lot of Heat coverage because of the offseason and things like that. And, football never stops. So I'm not saying the content's going to be something. I'm saying, but the boots on the ground stuff, me out in the field, I don't know what I'm going to be doing. I'm probably going to go to some fights, check some things out like that. Like there's a bare knuckle card coming up next week. I might go and check out some of the fight stuff from that next week. I wanted to make it to some of this Don King stuff this week, but I wasn't able to get down there. Just had a swamped week between Dolphins OTAs. Pat Riley spoke this week, so just didn't line up good for me. In line with family and it being the summer and things like that. But got a lot of fun coming up here in the rest of the summer, which I'm looking forward to. And if you guys are a fan of the radio show, Tobin and Leroy. 6 to 10 a.m. A lot of you guys got that on this channel and previously watched us on this channel. We are now on a new channel, which is The Ticket Miami. 790 The Ticket has its own YouTube page now, which we would like you guys to subscribe to. So if you want to catch a couple clips of the show every day, as you guys did on this channel, you guys can go to that channel, which I'll put in the description. And if you guys could go over there, you watch a couple clips from the radio program and check that on out. Cool beans with me. I would love it. The more you guys are consuming everything that we got, and I got some other stuff I think coming down the line too, in regards to some Dolphin stuff I think you guys will be into. But big story today in the NFL world was the comments of one Tom Brady, and he was asked directly about his interest in joining the Miami Dolphins. This has been a story that has been circulating a lot during the offseason about the Miami Dolphins trying to get Tom Brady and seemingly link him up with Sean Payton, and the Brian Flores lawsuit kind of nuked everything. And it seemed like the Dolphins were going to go in a different direction, and that this long affinity that they've had for Tom Brady was going to be something they really tried to make happen. But the Brian Flores lawsuit, being fired for what he felt was racial discrimination, was something that just completely nuked the plan. So Tom Brady was asked about this week, and this is what he had to say when asked about whether or not he was going to, if he had interest in joining the Miami Dolphins.
You were interested in becoming a part of the Miami Dolphins in any situation, in any circumstance. Any truth to those reports, Tom?
About me going to
joining the Dolphins in any capacity?
I mean, Again, I had a lot of conversations with a lot of people, as I've had for the last 3 or 4 years in my career, about, different opportunities when I'm done playing with football. So, I kind of made a decision of what I'd like to do, and I'll get to be in the game of football. And I think for me, the most important thing is where I'm at now, and what I hope to do for this team. That's been my commitment to, this team and organization. It's been so much fun for me to come here 2 years ago. It's been almost 2.5 years now, and it's been an incredible part of my football journey, and it's not over, and we still got a lot to accomplish. So I got a long life ahead, and there's a lot of fun things to do ahead. I'm looking forward to what's ahead in football, but at the same time, none of us are promised much beyond what we have now, and this is the current moment, and I'm really excited about going out there to try to compete and win a championship.
So definitely from Tom Brady, more of a non-denial than just flat out shooting it down. I mean, I don't know if you want to call it a confirmation, but he basically, he didn't deny it, that there were conversations that he's had with plenty of people. And with all the reporting that's been done on this, it's not really surprising. And I want to unpack a couple of things here. One, I'll get to my feelings on it not happening and why I'm kind of pleased it didn't happen. But I do think a lot of this stuff is fascinating because we have gotten from the Brian Flores lawsuit, because of the Brian Flores lawsuit, we've learned some interesting details about this. And one of those being that Brian Flores was allegedly supposed to meet Tom Brady when he first got the gig, and Tom Brady was going to, join the Dolphins, was up for joining the Dolphins, supposed to meet him on a yacht, and Brian Flores basically snubbed the meeting. Like, when he found out what was up, he went off, and from what he says, the relationship got really bad from then on there with Stephen Ross. That it wasn't quite the same. Not only with the whole tanking allegations about taking $100,000 per loss, but also insulting him in front of his boy Tom Brady, and making him look bad. So I'm interested for a couple of reasons in this, because the Brian Flores firing, I don't want us to have revisionist history on this, because I do think that a lot of people are very into Mike McDaniel being the coach. I like Mike McDaniel as the coach. I think he's been a breath of fresh air. I love what he seems to be doing for Tua Tagovailoa. I want to separate that for a second. Brian Flores, to me, in my opinion, was pretty surprising firing. I think around the league, everybody was looking at this and saying, wow, how you're firing a guy back-to-back winning seasons. You guys were just a couple of years removed from tanking, even though he didn't want to call it tanking, but, from one of the worst teams we've seen. Understanding that he got off to a bad start. I'm sure I'll get all that in the comments. I know. Okay, good. Bad start. Cool. You guys, in a vacuum, a guy with back-to-back winning seasons for the Dolphins getting fired as a coach, very surprising. But if you look at the whole step back of this picture, right, we know a few things. One, the Dolphins were rats off a ship on Tua, right? They were going to try and get a star quarterback one way or another. We heard from Deshaun Watson's lawyer this week that the Dolphins were trying to settle all of the lawsuits, or one of them. Not the Dolphins weren't trying, but the Deshaun Watson, excuse me for misspeaking. The Deshaun Watson, the Dolphins wanted Deshaun Watson to settle all the lawsuits before making the trade, and they could get, I think, 20 or 22, I think was the number that the lawyer claimed. So they were going to go make a deal for a star quarterback. Seemed like after all the blowback from it, and they did suffer a lot of criticism for that, they were going to be they're out of the Deshaun Watson game, but not necessarily out of getting a star quarterback, right? Not getting not rats off a ship off of getting a guy who is proven. Stephen Ross has been wanting this for a very long time. He wants a guy that he knows can be his franchise quarterback and plug and play, and let's just go. But the thing that's interesting about it, we know that there was interest now because of the Tom Brady thing, that he was trying to hook up him and Flores for a while. I wonder how much Tom Brady kind of kept that in the memory bank of, Brian Flores didn't want to meet with me originally. We know Tom Brady. Dude's got a petty streak. And thinks to himself, I'll come, but I'm not coming to the Dolphins unless you get rid of Brian Flores. And how are you going to justify getting rid of Brian Flores unless you have somebody the quality of Sean Payton to be the replacement, right? Like, we all thought it was Jim Harbaugh originally. Like, that was, I remember my reaction on the radio show was, that means they're going to get Jim Harbaugh, not knowing that they were going to go in this direction of, that there was going to be a lawsuit and all this type of stuff. Just, I remember my initial reaction on the day was, that means they're going to get Jim Harbaugh. Well, it turns out, no. It seems like they were going to go get Sean Payton, which Sean Payton, Hall of Fame coach, you want to say of a guy who has the credentials to replace a Brian Flores, it would seem like he would have those. But it's interesting because it feels very much like, well, why wouldn't Tom Brady feel like Brian Flores is a good enough coach to go play with? Like, he's going to play for Todd Bowles now. Brian Flores seems like he's got a pretty good track record, has proven himself as a head coach. You get the offensive guy that Tom Brady kind of wants in there. Why wouldn't that be good enough? Well, what if there was snubbery? If there was feeling like Tom Brady felt slighted that he didn't want to meet him initially in the meeting, that he wasn't worth tampering for in his mind, and held that with him and was like, listen, I'm into coming to the Miami Dolphins. You got to get rid of the coach. So they put that in place. They recruit Sean Payton. Dave Hyde reported today that they had a 5-year, $100 million deal in place for Sean Payton. Assistant coaches all saying they were asking places to buy, to rent, that it was basically you have guys, sources who are off the record but are being quoted as saying we all basically thought it was a done deal. The Flores lawsuit drops in their lap, and now all of a sudden, can you go and make it seem like Brian Flores was right this whole time? That you actually did fire him? Maybe not for racial discrimination, but fired him in the face of Tom Brady didn't want him to be his coach because he felt like he was snubbed. He felt like he didn't want him, wouldn't tamper for him, wouldn't meet with him. So he held that over his head. And all of a sudden he goes, all right, but I'll come there if you guys can get Sean Payton. And so now let's say Flores hears this And it's just like, oh, really? Tom, you want to play the petty game? Well, two can play at the petty party. And so he drops the lawsuit. Boom. All of a sudden, the Dolphins can't hire Sean Payton. You cannot make it look actually like you did have a predestined hire and traded for a coach when you fired a coach, a successful coach, and had this plan all along to replace him with Sean Payton, especially when there is a discrimination lawsuit that has been dropped in your lap. So all of that stuff I find really, really fascinating. That it's not just the idea that the Dolphins were in on Tom Brady. That to me is not a surprise. We know that the owners had an affinity for him for a very, very long time. But I do find interesting the Sean Payton element to it, because why wouldn't Tom Brady think that Brian Flores was a good enough head coach based on his credentials at the time? And then you learn from the Brian Flores lawsuit that there was a past meeting they were supposed to have that he apparently was not in on. Would it be crazy to think that Tom Brady puts that in his memory? He goes, I'm not playing for that guy. Dude got petty on Bruce Arians in like 2 weeks because Bruce Arians said some no-no words to him. So you think that a guy snubs him in a meeting, he's going to go have that guy as his coach? So I found all of that very, very fascinating with this Tom Brady, the non-denial, the details on Sean Payton having a deal in place, and it all kind of just getting blown up by the Flores lawsuit. But I will say this. Look, I do want to, with the Tom Brady thing, I'm not into it. I wasn't into it. I haven't been into any of these rumors about them going after Tom Brady. I'm not into the Miami Dolphins going and asking daddy for a ring. Like a guy that has reigned over not only just the league, but your division for so long. I'm not into the Dolphins hitching their wagon to it. I think it's very weird to go start rooting for a guy you hated like poison your entire life. The Dolphins did do some pretty good PR this year and spin around this offseason in a really, really good way. I think that Mike McDaniel inadvertently, it seems like, kind of landed at the Dolphins' feet through all of this. And I love the guy. I it's going to be, this is non-football, right now. This is all just practice. But as far as just his vibe, the way the players are talking about him, and all of that stuff, the innovativeness of that he seems to bring to the table, the comfort level that he has with Tua, the way Tua is speaking. Talked a little bit about this in my last video, just the way that the energy is around that building. I do ultimately think that they may have stumbled into something better. Because it's already incredible what Tom Brady did, right? Like, he went to Tampa Bay, he won a championship after the Patriots, but to keep thinking this guy is going to dial it up, and I don't know, maybe he could be hoisting the Lombardi Trophy again and I look like an idiot, but to keep thinking that Father Time for him is just it's just endless. Like, he can always beat it, and it's always gonna work out. And the big name coach and him are going to be a match made in heaven. What if they weren't? Like, he got sick of Bruce Arians in a year. What if him and Sean Payton clashed in a year? Now all of a sudden you got all this drama that's surrounding all this type of stuff. I just think for me, winning the championship, maybe Tampa's got that forever and they feel great and all that stuff, but they're not rivals with Tom Brady. Never were rivals with Tom Brady. It was literally probably the perfect team for him to go to because there's like no foundational bridge between them and the Patriots. If he goes to the Dolphins, it's like you're going to a division rival, and maybe you get to get your revenge on Bill Belichick twice a year and all that type of stuff. Cool. But I just think that the idea of this team hasn't won since the 70s, and the way you're going to go do it is, or try to go do it, is to go ask the greatest quarterback of all time from credentials that are unmatched, to ask him to do that. And then do it with this Hall of Fame coach and pay him all this money. I just feel like it could have disaster written all over it. Like, listen, Dan Marino and Jimmy Johnson weren't the best match made in heaven. Hall of Fame coach, Hall of Fame quarterback. And that was your own guy. And they didn't see eye to eye. And I know there were reports that Tom Brady was close to going to New Orleans and all that type of stuff. But I do really feel like, as good, maybe if it works out for the best, you don't care. But I do feel like the satisfaction Dolphins will have if it is Mike McDaniel, and it is Tua Tagovailoa, is going to be tenfold on what it would have been in the best scenario, Tom Brady, while ignoring it also could just be the worst. It could have just been an absolute disaster. And people are going to look at this and say the Dolphins are idiots and they're stupid and all that type of stuff. All right, well, look, they tried to do it, and they just had a curveball they didn't throw, they didn't see coming, thrown in their lap. But for me, in a lot of ways, I'm glad it didn't happen, because it seemed like they very much wanted it to happen. It does seem very much like they did not have this grand belief in Tua Tagovailoa, and they did have to have a pivot of, what do we do? Okay, let's go get the most dynamic receiver in the league that we can get, and let's pair him with this innovative coach, and let's put all the PR spin on that. And it does feel like, in a lot of ways, in the fans' eyes, I think the Dolphins have come out on top. This could all change with how the football season plays out, but this whole Tom Brady, Sean Payton thing, I wasn't into it when I first heard the rumors. I'm not into it now. The thing that I find fascinating about it is the idea that Tom Brady didn't want Brian Flores as his coach, and it seems like that had a very interesting wrinkle into all of this, more so than the Dolphins just kind of, Dolphins just putting it under the guise of Flores was difficult to work with and Flores didn't believe in Tua. And maybe all those things are true, and maybe all those things would have been other reasons for a less successful coach to get fired. But I think that the only reason you fire a guy who has that good of a record in his last 2 seasons is you're trying to catch a whale, and that whale does not want Brian Flores as his head coach. And they just didn't expect Brian Flores to punch back with what he punched back with. But in a lot of ways, I'm glad it didn't happen. And in every way, I'm really glad it didn't happen, because I didn't want Tom Brady on the Dolphins. I'm loving McCoachin. I hope Tua works out. I hope he works out with Regan Waddle. I hope the Legion of Zoom is awesome this season. And I think it's going to be a lot more, there's going to be a lot more satisfaction in that than there would be for Tom Brady adding you to his ring collection and all these Sully and Murphs acting like, well, cousins. We're like champion Tom Brady cousins. Ugh, I don't want that. I saw them do that. I have some, Sully and Murphs down here who were like, oh, we're like Bucks fans. We're rooting for the Bucks. It's like, no, you're not. He left you. And I would have probably been, you could have talked me into it more if it would have happened right when he leaves the Patriots. Like, you're the first team when they initially wanted to do it. Okay. I would have talked myself into a little, but now he's already done it and he's won. You think he's just going to keep jumping team to team to team and racking up rings? Hard sell for me. Hard sell for me in a lot of ways. But a lot of fascinating wrinkles into this, and it was interesting to hear Tom Brady comment on it yesterday.